All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Liz Schaller. I am the NIMAC director, joined today by Rosemary Horton Baggott, our expert Braille transcriber, who has been leading our series on Braille 2000 NIMAS textbook transcription from start to finish. We have two sessions remaining after this afternoon. Next week, session 5, we'll be talking all about math. As well as alphabetic references. And then session 6, the NIMAC will kind of give you an eBraille overview of the file format and where we are today with producing eBraille, as well as kind of a series Q&A wrap up in session 6. Today, session 4, we will be talking about headings, tables, and finally, some more about speed Braille keys. So our overview for today, first we'll walk through our slides, and Rosemary will talk about the Braille 2000 features for editing and formatting your headings, setting up your speed Braille keys, as well as tables. And then we'll switch over to the demo portion, at which point she will demonstrate all of those things, including setting up her subsequent volumes, and then formatting headings and tables, and setting up those speed Braille keys. So our learning objectives today. Our first objective is to learn how to adjust headings in Braille 2000. Our second is to learn how to set up Braille 2000 speed Braille keys. And then our third is to understand how to follow formats guidance to transcribe tables from NIMAS files. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Rosemary.
Thank you, Liz. Um, Hello, everybody. I'm going to just run through the not the demo, run through quickly the setting up subsequent volumes. We talked about it a little bit last time, but then I'll demonstrate it later. So basically, there are different processes. What I typically do, I'll either um, copy and paste, save file as the I save my file as the new number, and then I go back and edit both. And it'll make more sense when I show that. Just it's important when copying from the finished file in that same work to edit to reflect the new file information on the title page and contents and so on. So that's just a quick overview. I'll demonstrate later quickly because we've talked about it already. Any questions before we go into headings?
I don't think so, but we do have a poll question. And actually, first, I do want to find out who we have here today. So if you can let us know which option best describes your role. Are you a NIMAC authorized user or state coordinator? Are you a NIMAC AMP? Are you a Braille transcriber not registered with the NIMAC? Are you a TVI or a paraprofessional or other? And if you respond other, please put your answer in the chat for us. Okay. Poll. So it looks like about half of our folks here today are already NIMAC users, and then we have some other folks as well who are not currently registered with the NIMAC, so that's good to know. And then we have a second full question for you about headings. Okay. How often do you adjust heading hierarchy mid-project versus establishing the hierarchy at the beginning of the project? Let us know. I always establish the hierarchy at the beginning of a project. I have to make adjustments occasionally, or I often make adjustments. And be honest, there's no wrong answer to this, but it's good to know. We were curious about folks' process. Okay, look. So let's see. About a quarter of folks say that they always establish the hierarchy at the beginning, but the rest of our folks do have to make some adjustments as they're working. So that's really good to know as we're looking at headings and how to format them. So thanks. You want to take it away, Rosemary?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Seeing an option. It's okay. Um, make this advance. Okay. So just a quick run through some of the points from headings and from formats. This is probably one of the biggest needs I see for transcriber discretion when using an NIMAS file. NIMAS typically follows the print design, but the bottom line is the transcriber needs to look at the from the perspective of the Braille reader. So print books, just skimming through your print books, use various methods to distinguish headings. They have different fonts and font sizes, color placement on the page, etc. There is a hierarchy structure of levels in the print that should be followed also in Braille. Headings are one of the most important ways that the reader obtains information about the print format of material being presented on the Braille page. I keep seeing the word print. I don't know any other way to do this than to look at the print book before starting, because that's what we're going to follow. There are basically three different types of headings in Braille: the center, the cell 5, and the cell 7. And I find the NIMAS files coming in to be pretty consistent. At least they're consistent in their presentation. Then, but you have to look ahead of time and decide what are the main headings. Those are the centered ones in Braille. Then what are the settings underneath that would be your cell 5, and any subheadings under there would be cell 7. Now, sometimes in more complex print books and upper levels, they might have different subheadings based on color, and there'll be different colors or different topics within a topic. And for that, really to go through ahead of time and decide, is this essential? Do I need to make a whole special symbol for these kind of headings, or does it fit under the 5 or the 7? And it's based on content and teaching. Really, it's not, and there's no programs that are going to be able to get that, if you know what I mean. It's like a program will look at the print. The print, the books get more and more complex as time goes by, and graphic design and what some people call eye candy. So we have to make that decision. How is this going to communicate to the reader? And I find if I make those decisions before I start, I rarely need to go back and change any midstream. Because if you change something midstream, you think, I really think this should be a different kind of heading, you have to go back and do it for the whole book you've already done, including volumes you may have sent in. So that's why it's so important to do it at the beginning, because consistency is key for transcription for the sake of the readers and the students. Formats is a great tool. Headings. You can't, Braille 2000 does have the option to set full file conversion for NIMAS generated headings. It's a complex process. I think that Bob Stepp's making that simpler, but that would be something to check with him if you prefer to do it that way. I use my keyboard commands a lot, the speed Braille key, and I think that's basically where I'm going to go right now. Formats chapter 4, section 4 for general provisions about blank lines, box materials, subsequent headings, and so on. So,
Can I can I add something
question.
really quick, Rosemary, just about headings in NIMAS? Because I think it's important to understand like the structure of an XML file is hierarchical, and in a NIMAS XML file, you can have up to 6 heading levels. And in Braille, you only have 3 heading levels. So there are definitely changes that need to be made as a transcriber when you're looking at that NIMAS file and how it comes in Braille 2000. I don't think you're hardly ever going to have a clean, just all the headings are exactly the right level to correspond with your Braille book because a NIMAS file is used for other purposes beyond just Braille transcription. So hopefully that's helpful context to folks and why when you pull that file into Braille 2000 or into Braille Blaster, all those heading levels are not going to correspond exactly right to what you would expect in Braille.
Right. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes, when I said they come in pretty well, the NIMAS file itself is consistent, and I'll show that today when I in the demo and how I format. Because yes, that they're wonderfully consistent. I've just already decided ahead of time when I see it in print, this is a centered or this is a cell five.
Right,
And
right.
yes, thank you for clarifying that.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't see any questions, so I think you can move on to speed Braille keys.
Okay, and I'm going to be going back and forth in the demo too, headings, tables, and speed braille keys, because they all intertwine. So we've talked about these a little bit. Speed braille keys to set speed braille keys. The command is view speed braille keys, and then you get a pop-up window, and we're going to look today at what some of those options are. So this is basically the how-to. It's here. The instructions are here, but it'll make more sense when I do it. And when you want to follow up later in practicing these, the video that Jonathan Powers has on his channel, Braille Tips, is excellent. Shows how to do it, some samples, and will go beyond. It goes beyond what I covered today. So that's basically it about speed Braille keys until I demonstrate them. Unless anybody has any questions about this.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions about speed Braille keys? Okay, I'm not seeing any in the chat, so we're gonna jump into tables next. Before we do, curious. Oh, wrong one. I want to do this. We have two poll questions about tables, so apologies. So this question, do you refer to formats when formatting tables in Braille transcription? Yes, all the time. Yes, sometimes. Yes, once in a while. Or no, I don't refer to formats. Okay. And that poll, share results. So it looks like everybody refers to formats sometimes and then some more frequently than others, but good to know that everyone's utilizing that resource. That's great. Okay.
So I'd like to tie that question sometimes to the complexity of the tables. There are certain little ones that are just like, oh yeah, I know how to do this, but there are more kinds of tables than I can count. So formats, according to formats, a table is an orderly arrangement of data, especially one in which it's arranged in columns and rows in an essentially rectangular form. Are transcribed as they are in print if possible, and alternate methods are used when that is not possible. Clarity for the reader, the intended use of the table, and the information contained in a table are all considered when selecting an alternative table format. That is the kind of thing, like you can don't see my mouse, you see my mouse on this. That is the kind of thing that, in my not so humble opinion, only a human being is going to be able to make the final decision on. There are the NIMAS files tag things for tables. Both Braille Blaster and Braille 2000 have some conversions, but sometimes, as you'll see today, there are just some things that look a certain way in print, but maybe they don't need to be in a table. Or maybe they're not in a table, but they would be better served in a table. And that's where understanding from the perspective of the reader and the content, the educational material is crucial for a transcriber. So we'll see. We'll look at both kinds of tables today. NIMAS files include the table formatting found in the print book. However, this is the song I sing. Braille transcriber will need to adapt this formatting much of the time. See formats 11 for more features. There are lots of examples. It's kind of saying the same thing. Differences in artistic layout. Sometimes the translator, Braille Blaster or Braille 2000, will read print material as a table that's not actually a table. As I've talked about before, if you see the blue shading behind material in Braille 2000 and you want to, I say think for myself and do the editing, I just highlight that and say edit as plain text. That's the only way really to edit using the transcription process I do. Sometimes it's generally usable, sometimes it's not, and those are things I think that both programs are working on. I'll show one example of that today. You'll see two tables back to back. Tables and lists and colored shading. Okay, that's why the third point, that's why I highlight and edit as plain text. And there's the commands for how to do that. Types of tables, some examples. The most common ones I find myself using are basic keyed column headings or row headings. Wide tables can be done in a listed table format or a stair-step format or on facing pages, and any number of other formats. Using formats for tables when you get into the upper level books is kind of crucial and really fun, because it took away from me, years ago, be like, what in the world do I do with this? And there will be ideas in there for those. This is, how do I do this? So, is this a demo overview for the whole demo? Okay. Any questions there? Yeah, any questions so far?
Let's see. I'm not seeing any questions. We do have, let's see. Yeah, I don't see any questions, but I know you've shown me some examples of things that it's definitely requires some thought and intentionality when you're pulling your NIMAS file in and figuring out how to format something in a way that actually makes sense. And again, the limitation of the NIMAS tagging for Braille, I honestly feel like tables is maybe the most challenging. Spatial math too, but tables just do tend to require a lot of finessing to really make them make sense for Braille. Yeah. All right. Well, if there are no questions, then we'll hop into the demo. There is a lot to cover in the demo today.
Okay, so we're going to explore Braille 2000 features for editing and formatting. I'll briefly show how I set up subsequent volumes in a large work, and then we'll get some more on headings, setting up speed Braille keys and tables, kind of all intertwined.
Great.
And so I'm stopping sharing. I didn't really need to stop sharing. I just needed to get out of the slide presentation.
That's all right.
Okay, let's
We're just switching gears.
hit the wrong X. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so I was going to start with an open page, so I wasn't confusing people, but I'm going to start with just setting up subsequent volumes, doing this quickly. This is the file that we have been kind of working through, the home connections, and I have my title page, preliminary pages here, transcriber's new page, table of contents, the entire table of contents in the first volume. So I haven't, in this file, haven't finished this volume. I'm just going to pretend that I've finished this volume. I'm going to pretend that I'm at the beginning of the next volume. So I do a search for Unit 2 right now to find that from the cursor, so I don't have to wade through the table of contents. And let's just say that this is where I am in the file. So I'm going to, at the end of at the end of volume 1, I will center the transcriber's note end of volume 1, and that would be the end of that page. Advance to the next page. Here I have my volume 2. So where it would start. I'm going to save, I'll make sure that I save this as volume 1. Let's just say it is. Okay, save as volume 1. And I'll put this over here so you can see that it popped up. Save as, I'll just say volume 1 on here. And I save that in my file. That's what I basically want. I'd go to the beginning of the page, beginning of the file and say, okay, it was page, Braille pages were, go back and see. That's where my search is coming in. I forgot to. Okay, so this would be my last page of the volume 1, and it's page A16 is the print page, and the Braille page is 18. So I'll put my bookmark there, and then go Control Home back to the beginning, volume 1, unit 1, and I'm going to say it ends on. I have to go back and count how many so I didn't do this yet, so I'm going to scroll through. How many T pages do I have? 6 T pages, T6. And in this volume, my P pages, the contents, go up to page 5. That's an odd number. It needs to be an even number because the text should begin on a facing right page. So I'm just going to advance the page and add another one. So now I have, I forget already. What did I say? How many T pages did I have? 6. I'm going to go back to the beginning and I enter that T1 to T6, P1 to P6, and 1 to 18. And then my print page would be A16. That's the continuation number I want in there. So that's now my saving volume 1. I saved that as volume 1. Now I'm going to start my next volume and keep this intact. So the way I do it is I save this as volume 2. Save as, I change that to a 2. And save. So I'll go in here. My volume 1 is still saved as the entire file. I'll eventually go through and delete the unnecessary material, but I learned some things the hard way about how to not delete things till I was sure. So I'm going to change this to volume 2, unit 2. I'll be checking all this at the end. How many TMP pages, how many Braille pages. My beginning print page will be 17. So this is now my second volume. The second title page material was only in the first volume. So I delete that. And depending on your agency, if you're working for an agency that wants a blank second page, you just leave that. And I look and I think, what happened to my running head? I'll go back and fix that later because we've already done running head. Sometimes that's got to do with the annotation. I'll spend a lot of annotation running head. Why are you not showing up? I'm going to try just, there it is. Now I'll move this to the next page. Usually, sometimes happens on the second page. And just keep an eye out because I ended up with too many there. Something to do with the page annotations. Anyway, this is my volume 2 that I'd be working with. So I look through and I think, what do I want? Go to the third page. Thank you. Do you see that doing that? I don't know what this is. Okay, there's something to do with the annotations, and I'm just gonna remove that page break. I don't know. This T3 is where my special symbol should be. there's a problem in here that I don't understand, and I'm not going to take time on it right now. But I do have to make sure that it's got to do with the annotations. Just give me an even number page there. So here's my table of contents. In the second volume, I'm going to delete all the material from the first volume. I'm beginning the second volume with Unit 2, so I keep that in there. I keep my whole contents in here because I'm going to edit this as I go along, and I'll eventually remove everything that's not needed. Just keep what's relevant to that volume. Okay, here I am with my first print page of the file. This is the one that I say do page advance. Selected hide the running head because this is the first page of text. This is the version, I don't know, this is 2.42 and I've been using 2.39, so there might be something new in here. To next page, hide running head. Here I am now. I'm guessing it has something to do with the fact that I'm trying to do that on a blank line, so I'm going to move this up right now just to make that work. That makes sense. So here's my new material. This is now volume 2 and everything after that. So I'm just going to, the problem is it still has volume 1 in it. So I look at my page number is 1, and I want to delete everything up through page 16 that I've already supposedly transcribed for this volume. So I go up to the end of volume and I delete that because it's already saved in volume 1. And then I have my beginning page. I hit delete, and I'm going to delete this page number. Remember what it is. This is page 17. Now I could just start from the beginning of this file, but I already have the heading that starts each volume. So I leave that heading and I delete the page line number for 17. Then I come up here and put it in. Do page, Braille page 1, print page 17. Okay. And so Braille 2000 has gone ahead and delete this from the previous volume. Now I'm ready to format my second volume. And you'll see the page numbers have already been put in. So I would save that as volume 2. I've already done that, so I just save it. Then I go back and I reopen the volume 1 that I had. Turn these on. And I'm going to go back to that end of the volume where I was. So this is the end of volume 1. Now that I know I'm just going to delete all of this, remember, because I've already saved that as volume 2, and I'm going to delete that. So that's how I do it. I know there are other ways. I tried other ways in the beginning when I was doing this process and made all the mistakes of, like I said, deleting files before I'd saved the information somewhere. And I'm sure there are other processes, which might be interesting to hear if people have any other processes they use before we go on. I'm going to take this out.
Yeah, definitely feel free in the chat if you have one other way that you like to split up your volumes. Let us know.
This is,
Julie in the chat asks, do you ever use do select pages for dividing volumes? Have you ever used that method, Rosemary?
no, does she do that? At what point in the process would that be? Like at the, I'm curious about that. I'm not familiar with that one. Do select
You're
page.
welcome to unmute too, Julie, if you want to explain a little more about what your process.
It's Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, there you go, Rosemary. It's been a little while since I've done it, to be honest, but it works really slick for this sort of thing. And you can select these what pages you want, and then there's a little box in the lower left. No,
Hmm.
the button in the sort of middle left right there says include the current page. There used to be an option for inner point. I don't see where that is now, but anyway. And then you can do this manually or the tab up top that says by page property. So you can select, there are a bunch of different properties that you can choose from. And then in the lower right, it says how to process the selected pages. And one of the options, at least used to be copy or cut and set to a new work area. So all of the saving and everything that you have is done in one fell swoop.
Do you do this at, thank you, Julie. Do you do this at the end of a whole project, like divide the book up into individual volumes this way, or?
However you want to do it. I mean, this is really versatile and can work in a lot of different ways. There are a lot of different options to
Mhm.
choose. There you see, like you can include drawing spaces or not include whatever. There are also all sorts like different possibilities. You just set what you want to do when you want to, and then you pick your pages, like clicking on them in the list of page numbers over there, and it highlights which ones you selected. And then again, in the lower right, you select what you want to do with those pages. So do you want to copy them, cut them? Yeah, it's a whole
Yeah,
bunch of different options. So
yeah,
however you want to use it, it really depends, like that would determine when you use it.
yeah. Well, thank you. That's, I mean, that would be, I would guess on types of project or what you're doing, like I don't emboss, but yeah, how to process. Thanks for mentioning that tool. I should play around with more of these tools. I think for me, because I'm usually doing, so some people will send the whole, they want the whole book. I'm usually sending volumes as I go. So I also like being in control of things and making sure that they work. But I will play with this with something that I'm not I just curious, has anybody else used that? Throw that in the chat, speed, because that's the first time I've been aware of it, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. Jonathan says that he basically does the same other than having the contents in its own file and pasting it in for each volume, which he said helps if you have like a contents in brief in volume one and then like a larger table of
Yeah,
contents. So
yeah.
makes sense.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julie.
Yeah, definitely learn something every day. I'm gonna close this out, the one that says volume one, because so I don't get mixed up and try to use that for something I've already planned to do with something else. Yeah. And I'm going to go into look and back and forth between headings and speed braille keys. So just a quick look at something for headings. This is a file I just created that I just pulled this straight from formats, and it just has to do with headings and formats. Let me put that on print view. Created as a Braille document, but just headings and tables. So there's column headings and row headings are the two divisions we talk about. And it's just funny, I can read the Braille better than the print. I'm like, what is that? Column headings immediately precede their respective columns and are limited to 2 lines. Some different principles about column headings that you can read through it. Start the first column heading in cell 1. Do not use guide dots between column headings, although you do between entries. So all column headings end on the same line if there's multiple column headings. Yes. Column separation lines. A horizontal line used to separate column headings from the column entries. This is just an example. Now, I created this using my speed Braille keys. So I was playing around with, okay, my centered headings, my 1 runovers and 5 for a nested list, 3 runovers and 5. Then there was a section on row headings. They're the horizontal headings for the horizontal entries. Now, this is a place where some of the imports from the NIMAS file can get kind of weird. So this is available in formats, but if anybody wants to just look at it as a Braille file, where I just created an outline based on those 2 sections from formats 11, column headings and row headings and tables. That's what that is. And I think Liz said, might make that available. It's just one example. It's all in formats. So headings and format. I'm going to close that one. I found out for me to keep this Braille 2000 page. Oh, it didn't fit everything together there. Anyway, okay. So the speed Braille keys or headings in my demo file. Okay, here's the demo file. So this is the demo file we had, and is this the one I just messed up? Let me go back and find the original one, just because I had the original one bookmarked. Coming over here. This is the one I want. So I don't know if we've talked about this. I think I mentioned it the first day, but I'm looking at these. The headings of which files I have opened are here on this left panel. And I don't need this one. I do want this one. So this is again the practice file we started with in the first volume. And I'm just going to, for speed Braille keys, I've already created one and used the letter P to put it in print view, but I don't have one to put it back into Braille view. So I'm going to create a speed Braille key right away, right now for that. And so the speed Braille creation command is search. No, on the wrong page. No, it's view. Why is it not showing up? View S. There we go. Oh, great. Speed Braille keys. I'm doing all view speed Braille keys. Here's my panel. So these are an example of the speed Braille keys. These are the ones that I have already created in my system. And I used the interpret bar over here. I'll look at those in a minute. For right now, I'm just going to create a new one. To create a speed Braille key, I click new. I looked at this briefly the other day. Press the key or enter the chord you want for your speed Braille key. I'm going to use an F2. And I want that to return me to Braille view. So I enter that description, and as soon as I click next, well, it's not as soon, there's 2 next. You're now ready to record the actions of your speed Braille key. After you click next, the recording indicator, extreme upper left corner, will blink. This is what I found confusing in the beginning years ago doing this. It's when to click next and when to start. So this is just instructional. It will continue blinking until you stop recording. To stop recording, press the pause, break key, or mouse click the blinking recording indicator, which is what I do. So now I'm going to click next, and then I'm not going to touch anything till I'm sure what I'm doing. I've already practiced this. I know I want to go over here. I just want to tell it how to return to Braille view. And so I clicked on the B for Braille view. Now I go up here to stop it recording, and I click on the recording. Your speed Braille definition can be stored for use with the current file only, or it can be stored at the system level for use on all files. The other day I saved it in one file for practice, but I want it to be in my system, which means every Braille file I use now, that F2 is going to tell it to return to Braille view. And I click finish. And so I'm going to go back and forth. I'm going to, on my keyboard, hit a P. It puts me to print view. Then I'll hit the F2. It puts me back in Braille view. So that's a relief because that saves some time of searching over here in this left toolbar. Now let's take a quick look at what kind of things we're going to be creating speed Braille keys for, what things I have. The style, anything on the toolbar. The style is a big one. If I click on the style, no, not right click. Is it right click or left click? No, tried that already. So I'm going to click on the style key just to see what the options are over here. I can block, centered, head. This is how to create different levels of headings. I've used the letter C to create a centered heading. I'm not sure what some of them mean. I think indent is 3 runovers in 1. So I use an R for that. I don't remember why, but it's what I use. It's what my fingers know. Nested list, click on that, look at those options, 1 and 3, 3 and 5, 5 and 7. I have a key I use for 5 runovers and 7, which was more common when I was before UEB came out. I have another one that I use for 5 runovers and 5, which is not a nested list. So maybe that's back over here. So anyway, you can look through any of these options and create speed Braille keys for them. I'll look again at the view as speed Braille keys. So again, that gives some explanation of what I have here. There'll be other ones. I know some people do a lot of formatting with their speed Braille keys. That would have been a fun question. Maybe somebody on here said a couple years ago, I do almost all my formatting with speed Braille keys. So I get in a process of doing things, and then I'll eventually think, I think I'll try something new like now. And it's a relief. So that's the process of creating the speed Braille keys. There was another one. Oh, this other one. I'll do one more. This thing of the interpret on and off, because every time I open one of these files, I find myself clicking on here to give it the green line under the current Braille line I'm on. So I don't think I saved it to the system. Yeah, I'm going to say I want to do one more. I'm going to do view, S for speed Braille keys. And I'm going to create a new one for that toggle. And I'm just going to use F3 because this tells me anything I can use, any of the 63 chords, 20 letters, and so on and so forth. I'm going to enter what I want right now. I'm going to enter the F3. And I'm going to make that the interpret toggle. I'll just use the same key. It'll go back and forth between putting this green line on or off. And I do next, tell it next. You're now ready to record the actions. One more next. Then I go over here and I click on the interpret bar in the tool panel. And it was recording. Now I stop the recording by clicking on that. I'm going to make it available to my whole system and finish. And now I just have to hit the F3 and the line is on again, off again, on again, on. And if you like to perseverate, just kidding. So that's me creating 2 new ones that I have not used before this year, but will be really happy to use now. And I'm going to do a little bit of demonstration, just unless there's any questions on that process of the speed Braille key creation, or anybody has a favorite speed Braille key that say, oh, I love this because it does this and such.
Yeah, please, if you have any recommendations for ones that have been time savers for you, please do put them in the chat. I think everyone would love to hear. Jonathan did mention a bit earlier, he uses that select pages functionality that Julie brought up to copy the tactile graphics pages to a new work area, and
Oh,
then copies those lines to get the text into CorelDRAW.
oh. Jonathan, it would be awesome to see a video on that someplace. You want to create that, otherwise I'll be reaching out. That's what you were talking about. And see, I think I've heard him mention that before, but I didn't know the tool. So thank you, Julie. I love the teamwork
Yeah.
ideas.
Oh, he said I'll have to make one.
Yeah, sounds good. Good videos. I think we've got one in every one of these sessions, at least after the first, because there really are good videos. It explains things really clearly.
Julie mentioned a few. She likes to use box lines, bullets, skip to next print page or next Braille page. She said she has quite a few that she likes to
Yeah, thank you.
use.
Yeah, I have one for an opening box line. I think I created one for a closing box line a while ago. It's got some problems that has to do with the space. So I'll show an alternative to that. Yes, it is good to have one, and I'll play with it again. Um, and yeah, so Julie, must be the one who mentioned that using them for a page advance before. I could see that my fingers are so used to just doing the commands like on here, I better not try right in the middle of the file because I'm not transcribing, thinking, what am I doing? But yeah, there are commands that are in there, but yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go to a simple page and just format. This is where I was going to format a little bit and then go into tables. I'm just going to show you how I run my speed Braille keys. So this is Home Connections, print page 29. And this is a place in this file that I hadn't touched yet. Mixed practice. I'll probably just scroll. I could do a search, but I'll just scroll through. I'm going to turn on my F3 line first. Takes a while for me to remember what I've done, created them, but then they'll happen. So page 29. Okay, here I am on print page 29, and oh, here I am on print page 29. So let's just imagine I have already formatted this up here. I picked this page because it had a number of things on here that I could use speed Braille keys to show. So it comes in with the mixed practice. Now in this book, there's the title of the lesson has been centered, and the mixed practice in this book happens to be a title of a lesson. So those are the ones I've left as centered headings. They came in as centered headings. I don't like those green lines, but let's just say I'm going to put this here. May or may not include that page 1 of 2 as part of the centered heading, but I'm just going to do that for all intents and purposes right now. If the Unit 2, Module 3, Session 3 line is included, that's actually at the top of the print page. I'm not sure why it came in that way, so I'm going to copy and paste it and move up. I'm just going to do this process with my speed Braille keys and talk through what I'm doing. I take out that bold type from session. I'm not sure why that's still there. I might do a global change in that. If I start at the beginning, then I find, okay, this can consistently, when it says session something, that word session is bold type, then I will copy and paste that into a global. Just convert that to non-bold, which I demonstrated the other day. Now here's something, and I found this actually works. Every page has this name, a bunch of lines, the vertical bar, date, a bunch of lines. And I'm actually working on this project on another computer. I was just deleting these as I went, and the other day I tried this. I copied that whole block. If it's because we don't put these, according to formats, we don't put these in the beginning of a beginning of every page like they are in print. And I'll put a, sorry, transcriber's note to that effect on the transcriber's note page. But I'm going to see if I can just delete them from the whole file so I don't have to deal with them and be deleting at the beginning of every page. I highlighted that. I do Control C, copy. I do the search in Braille 2000. I'm going to paste that entire block of text into the find section. Replace, I'm going to put nothing and just replace all, and it disappeared. And I found out it actually disappeared from the whole book, which is exactly what I wanted. So that's where I use the global edit when I've done it a few times, and I think I don't want to have to do this for every lesson. So here I am at the, let me put this down a little so you can see. All right, the number 1 got cut off in here, but there is a 1 in the instructions before the instructions find the missing numbers in the equations. So I have a speed Braille, and because it's a nested list, I have 1 and 2, and then I have the subdivisions under section 2. So this would be 1 runovers and 5 for the whole problem set, whether they have subdivisions or not. That's a format's decision. So on the find missing numbers, I'm just gonna click back on here so it knows I'm doing this. Come to that line, and my speed Braille key, you see it's 1. Now this is not the, this would be displayed. I've decided to make these displayed, the list of problems. And they came in nicely. This was a Braille Blaster conversion to Braille 2000. However, to display them, the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the multiple cell lines. So I'm just going to go down, highlight that portion, enter that. Control V. In the replace, I'm going to put in 1 underscore indicator. And they were pretty much all done correctly. Okay. I'm also going to go down and I'm going to change. You notice this was not MathML tagged. This book is a MathML book, but this is where UEB, and Liz can explain that at some point. I'm going to change the, this is a dash and it should be a minus. I'm going to change the dash by entering the 636 and converting it to a minus, a UEB minus symbol. Make sure that it's the highlighted portion. So if you look, you can see those were converted. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, okay, I want to get rid of the space on either side of the multiplication indicators. So I enter space, multiplication, space, and I have to put something after that space. Now, I might do some of these manually. I might do some of them globally. It depends. For now, for demonstration, I'll do globally. I take the space out between the multiplication indicator. I have to just do it and not talk. Do it with the underscore. So I pretty much gotten rid of most of those spaces. Space, minus, space number. And I do it I see a plus in there. And a mark indicator. Nope, that should have been a plus, sorry. So I've pretty much taken out all the spaces, and then I want to, that don't belong. And I'm going to display these in cell 7 because the problems and I just do that with a speed Braille key. So that was doing that page. Now down here, this is already, this number 2, are the following true or false? Is 1 runovers and 5? They're on a runover, so it doesn't show. let's just say I want to, well, depending on how I do this, I'm going to make these 2 runovers and 5. There's my nested list. Now I might just, and this is one of those things I have to look at and think what's going to make more sense to them. This is really another way to do it, is to display the true, false, explain, in which case I, you know, and I can go up and display those. Just showing us some possibilities. I noticed that the bold type, now by this point in a book, I would have gotten rid of the bold in front of the, you see it on that, see in the print, it's ABC or bolded. And so I have the bold indicators before the ABC. I'm going to do a whole file edit because at this point I've already seen that, yes. OA. And I'm just going to make it A. I would want this to be whole file because I know this is, already know this is through the whole book. And I'm just going to get rid of those. It took it out. Then I have the bold symbol indicator and the grade 1 indicator. I'm just going to make it a grade 1 indicator. Again, when I wanted to do whole file, it's not on there. There's probably a speed Braille key for that, but I'm not going to worry about that. So you saw that it jumped over here. There's other things that I'm seeing in here. I probably would do a whole file change on this minus sign with I look at that and by the time I have a space before the dash, and it should be a minus, and a space after it and a numeric indicator, I think the only place that's going to be in the file is where it should be a minus. So I'm going to take that and just, because this is a practice demo and I can go back and check later, I'll do the whole file. So I set my bookmark. And I make it. And I go up and look and see, and yes, it did it, except I forgot to take out the space beforehand. So I can do that now. I highlighted the space, which I had done before. I just didn't enter it right. Now, when I enter that, I have to put the space in. That might be what happened. I want to get rid of that space because you know what? I'm not going to do that globally because I could just have a minus number someplace embedded in text and not after a problem or not in the middle of a problem. So I might not do that there. I might do it for a highlighted portion and nothing's highlighted, so it's not going to take it. So just close that out. I just saved myself a lot of agony. But in this setting where there's a space in front of it, a space after, and a numeric indicator, it's pretty much a math problem. So that's just an example of how I use the speed Braille keys. I would let's just say these are instructions for the next section. Solve each problem, show your thinking. I use my speed Braille key to set that 5 and 5. Make this 1 and 5. Oops, it doesn't fit on the page, so it technically has to be on the next page. So I advance down there. Next page. At this, oh, I don't have the next page on here. This is a smaller heading on the next page because it's a repeat heading of the, and then I have to decide whether to put these here, the page part of it here, or make that a cell 7 heading. These are all decisions that I will have made before I do the file. I look at this and I think, oh, there's that challenge. They both made it bold type and double cap, all capped. And that happens in just about every problem set in the book. I don't want to pick just the number. I take the space before it, set my bookmark, highlight the whole file. It's safer to highlight the whole file if I really want the whole file than to tell it whole file. Put this in here with the space in front of it. And then, actually, it doesn't matter, the space. I made it matter. I just take out the bold there. I didn't do that right. Paste, back, remove the bold, hit replace all. Now it changed it. Because they're just some of the way, I'll get going and I'm just like speed braille keys all the way down. And someday maybe I'll get together with Linda and Julie and find out how many she's using. So any questions on that? Because then we can go to tables or any things that people use speed braille keys to that would make some of this quicker.
There were a few other folks that put things in the chat, like Connie mentioned converting to Spanish. Someone else does that as well.
Yeah.
NIMAS indicators. Julie mentioned make uncontracted English. So yeah, lots of good options. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, I think
That
it's
reminded me. Yeah. I have an E on here to confirm for Spanish because when I was doing some Spanish book, then I have to be careful when you do the conversion, like for Spanish, it wants to know, can't get this all the way on here. Just move over. Okay. Confirm the region for code change to Spanish. I did this once and then I hit yes, do it before. Now when I see the whole thing highlight blue like that, I think, do I want to convert this to Spanish? No, that was a finger slip. So sometimes you have to be careful which you have to think about where you're going to put, where on the keyboard you're going to put these speed braille keys.
mm.
A foreign language one, that would be safe to use up in the F keys that I don't use all the time. So
Oh yeah. Good to think about that strategically for sure.
yeah, but you got me thinking, Connie. You said Connie was talking about that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been a while. Okay.
All right. Yeah, I think we're ready to switch over to tables.
Okay. So I don't think I need this one anymore. So here is our table. One of our tables. There's actually two tables in here, and this was a perfect setup. This is page 146. So I'm going to go in here to tables. Okay, that's an example. So this particular book that had math in it, I was able to do the Braille Blaster to Braille 2000 conversion. And that's what this file is I'm working with. You'll see these. I haven't worked a lot with this, but just be aware when you do a file that comes in from Braille Blaster to Braille 2000, the preliminary pages, the page numbers are not automatically set. I'll just scroll down a little bit and you'll see once we get down to the print page numbers are in here. Braille 2000 puts them in, but I still have some of this, like this was a line that came in with Braille Blaster. So I'll have to take that to the next page and delete that line and then replace it with the Braille 2000 line. It just kind of depends. You have to watch that when it's a Braille Blaster import, Braille Blaster conversion. It's usually just with the preliminary pages. But that aside, I'm going to search for my bookmark, which I put at page 146. So here's this table. And this is how it came in from the NIMAS file with the Braille Blaster to Braille 2000 import conversion. This is the table here. There's a heading across the top, Plan 1, that applies to both columns. This is part of what I put in that outline I went through about column headings and row headings. in this case, we don't have row headings. Not every table does. So the plan one, the way they read it was here. So I'm just going to look at what came in first. The numbers are bolded. We'll have to take that out. Ideally, they should have been caught by the Braille conversion, emphasis conversion. Remove emphasis from list prefixes, which this is technically a list, but it depends, I guess, on how it's read. So how am I going to do this? I like to start with and then they do have the two separate columns here, but there's not the line underneath. So I'm going to format this the way it should be formatted. I'm going to enter my box line with a speed Braille key. And there's the plan one. That should be at the left margin, and it should, according to formats, go across both of these other columns. So I'm going to, I don't know how wide they're going to be yet. So I'm going to enter these headings, separation lines, enter them manually. Probably way to do that. I'm going to look at this and say, okay, bummer. These just come in just the right length. However, these guys are bolded and need to not be. So I'm going to go down here and just enter the bold indicator and remove it. Bold. Okay, that took out the bolds. Now I have the fact that, okay, these are my column headings. I don't need to make these into two different lines, so I'm going to leave them as they are. This one under plan one should go all the way across. Now I'm just going to have to go back here, and I could do this any number of ways. It's just I copy those 2.5s and I just scroll down them. Oh, and when I get to here, okay, there's nothing in that line. We see in the print it's blank, so I'm going to enter the series of .5s, and I have to go back. I'll go back and check formats on this. Is it supposed to be just 3? If there was another column, I would make it all the way across. Some places I see 3. If anybody knows that one right away, I'd be glad to hear it. I would be looking at formats before I left this.
Julie
And
says .5s across the width of the column.
even if it's the last column? Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go through here and change that. Well, I'll just... When I enter one like this, I wish it would just jump to the next line where I want it to be, but it goes to the margin. So I'm using my end key to take it to the end of that line. Need a bottom box line, doesn't fit on the page, so I'm going to go down to this next page. This apparently was not formatted with running head, so that. Now here's what I do about my bottom box line, because I haven't, I should have a running head. Because I don't have a speed Braille key, I'll set my bookmark. I do Control N and go to the end of the file, and usually when I'm working on a file, I've just created one there. I come down here and I copy. And then I go back to where I left off. That's my little cheat until I figure out how to do it where it's not doing weird things with blank lines. So that was table 2, or plan 1. That was pretty simple. Now we get into plan 2, and here's an example of what I don't like. I mean, this happens frequently, and I think it's just somehow they're tagged or something. Liz, you probably know better. This has got plan 2 that should be over all 3 columns, and then we have 3 columns, which, yes, I can make them either, they can either be 2 lines, one above the other, or keyed. This one might have to be keyed, and I would create a key. But somehow something decided that, well, we're going to say that plan 2 is a cell 5 heading, and then we're going to repeat that cell 5 heading for every line. So we have plan 2 number of repetitions time, like I haven't been able to figure out, sometimes I try to figure out that day. Sometimes I try to figure out what it was thinking, but on these, I've just quit.
Yeah, it probably has something to do with the fact that there are multiple heading rows, which I think is kind of confusing for table tagging, and it could have confused the software. Or it could be something in the NIMAS file with where it wasn't tagged appropriately. It could be either, really.
Yeah. So I'll do a quick, this is not yet available, but I will sometimes if I can get a file to import with Braille 2000 version 2, it comes in differently. This one I think did not, but not this particular book, but this is still in beta testing. This is version 3, and this is how it came in. Where's my print view? P. Now let's go back because there's other problems. Um, the spelling doesn't like this, but this is the plan one. It came in pretty much the same as the other one did with the Braille blaster conversion, but in the next one, it's more usable. I'd have to play around with the column headings. Um, if I take that day and put it on the next line. Then anytime you do this, so let's just say I was doing this way, and I did the similar thing. Number of repetitions, that is red because of I can get rid of that line break notation or just space it. I'd put here on this. I'd have to play around with how to do the headings. I would probably do a key for number of repetitions. Let's just say I made it NU. And then take out the total repetitions. That could go, it could either go on one line or two, depending on what I'm doing. I would probably make this all on one line. If I'm going to use a key, I don't want to confuse the issue. See, I'm not used to working in this one. I'm used to working in it too. So that would be how I would do that. With the key, which I'm not going to take time to create right now because I'm going to look at some other options, unless somebody wants to see that. Here's a quick question for this. I can use a 2-letter keyed entry, and I always feel like 2 of these lines isn't enough, and so I'll put a third. Anybody have a for sure on that? Again, this is one of those things I would go back and check and formats for the third. But this is more usable. At least it comes in differently. So there's editing I'd have to do, taking out the bold and checking the math and doing that kind of thing. But I want to show some other another type of table. That's more usable. This one over here, the one that came with Braille Blaster, I've tried with these and I basically end up having to do these. I mean, I can do okay, I'm going to put plan 2 at the top. I don't want it every place, so I'm going to delete this plan 2 colon all the way through, and I highlight the whole table, which goes on for pages. And a lot of these tables are with the more columns are coming in like this. So that's a tagging thing that I hope someday to figure out. So I'm going to paste in the search the plan 2 and say, I want to get rid of that every place it's highlighted. And I also want to get rid of the bold, but whoops. Not to watch when where sometimes I'll be thinking I'm pasting it in one, and I'm not. But all that leaves me with is these numbers that I can go ahead and enter manually anyway. And sometimes the math is faster to enter manually. So that's an example of table tagging that's kind of funky. there is another example of a table. And it's, where did it go? Page 151. Now this one is, it's set up as a table. It's referred to in the text as a table. And so I look at this and I think there's a couple different ways you could do it. Which one am I in? Real bastard one. I go down to page 151. I basically created these somewhere else. Let me just show what I did with it. Uh, why? No. Scroll down. There's the plan one I created. Print. Plan two, finished. Oh, I like that. And coming down to 151. I think I used a speed okay for a bookmark, but I'm not sure. So coming into 151. I think I did this as a stair step. Yeah, table format is changed in Braille to a nested list with the following headings. That's how I did this one. And repeated the headings. So the negative, this is the standard way according to formats. They'll show you how to set up a transcriber's note describing the table format, negative thoughts, and then underneath that reframe, which spell check doesn't like, I guess. And then this is too hard. The reframe, I can learn from this. Negative thoughts, this kind of work isn't for me. Catch the typo. Speed Braille key, that should be a nested list, so that should be. This is not actually a nested list. I think I made this since I started to say nested list. And it's actually stair step format. But again, it kind of have to look at it and think which one makes more sense. Actually, I think the nested list makes more sense.
And I'm guessing, Rosemary, if this is the kind of thing where it reappears often in a textbook, it's one of those decisions you make and then you want to be consistent, right? So you want to do it the
Yeah,
same way every time.
yes. This
Yeah.
particular one, this particular table, this was the only time in the text it was like that,
Mm-hmm.
which requires a little more thinking. It's like, okay, why did you all have to do this? They had this kind of section, but it's not always in this table kind of format.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's the
Gotcha.
kind of thing where you want to decide ahead of time, how am I gonna, that part of the page isn't on here, but how am I gonna format these headings on this page? This was just
Yeah.
only, refer to it as a table, and I think, well, could be a list, could be. So I try to think what's gonna make it make sense for the kid, the reader.
Right. No, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious if anyone else, we're getting close to our time. So I don't know, does anyone have any questions about tables or strategies that you use when you're approaching table formatting? I know some can be really complex. Julie did put in the chat, she asked, for removing bold, do you ever use the buttons in the control panel, the bold, italics, underline, script buttons, the little four buttons in the control panel for that?
I've used, Julie, were you here from the beginning, Julie? Just, it's okay if you weren't. I'm just wondering if we're talking about the same thing. adjust. The adjust emphasis thing here, we talked about this the other day. I don't use this because when I try to, and I demonstrated this the other day, if I like say, okay, I highlight a section and I tell it I want it to make everything that's bold plain, it takes out the bold indicators. It also takes out the numeric indicators. Sometimes the
Right. I'm talking about something else.
yeah, okay, no. So no, I've again, which
Right
And
next to
on,
the Braille print source buttons, there's those tiny
yeah,
little 4 buttons right there. Those
uh-huh,
will toggle type forms on and off. And so you can highlight the
okay,
paragraph line, whatever you want. You can also hit the little red circle to select an entire paragraph all at once. And then you would click the B for bold in this case.
yeah.
And then that would probably put it in bold. And then you might click it again and make it everything unbold. So you don't have to do that. Um, so what was it? Select emphasis window that you had. That's
Oh,
not what I'm
I no,
talking about.
yeah. So I don't know. Thank you. I don't use that swap emphasis thing, but I do that now. My again, my finger. I would have to create speed braille keys for each of these. Remember this to do that because I'll just do a like if I want to take out all the bold in the file, or I don't take out the whole bold, but I highlight a section like I show, and I do the find and replace, and I'll specifically find. So I just did I do it for this file? Or was I doing it on another one? There are places in here where things are bold typed. And okay, so there's, for example, P represents the number of oh, that I do want underlined because that's letter P underlined represents the number of patients is also underlined. But if I find italics, I've already done it in here. So these have been, so the letter P as a variable is either bolded or italicized, often in print. And so it comes in that way in the file. So I'll just do that, highlight this, the bold emphasis and the grade 1 indicator, copy that. I'd make a decision, okay, I don't want this bold emphasis on the variables for the rest of the file anymore. So I highlight the whole rest of the file, or I may highlight a paragraph. So this is how I do it. I mean, and I just replace like that. So I think I had done that before and it probably only, but it would have changed that one I was just at, except I forgot to bookmark it. So
there's
no,
a
I haven't used
couple.
it either there, but this gives me more control in the decision making of what I'm doing. Go ahead.
That makes sense. Yeah, someone else, Connie mentioned that she likes to use the emphasis buttons in the panel a lot. And then Jonathan mentioned that the common word shortcuts for emphasis work in Braille 2000 as well. So like Control B or Control I that you would use in Word, they work in Braille 2000 as well. So that's a good
Oh,
tip.
so if I want to make if I want to make the whole transcriber's note page bold, then I just do Control B. Ooh, look at that. Now I'm going to do Control B again and take it away. Hey, that worked too.
That's a great tip. Thank you all so much for sharing some of the ways that you do your work. I will go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, Rosemary, so I can get the
Thank you.
exit survey link up there. Just to recap again, we looked at setting up your subsequent volumes today, as well as headings and setting up speed braille keys, and then some table formatting as well. It was a busy session. Um, I know we've taken questions throughout, but if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat. You're also welcome to unmute. And just as a reminder, we have two more sessions in our series. So next week, session 5, we're going to be talking a little more about math. We started to talk a little today, but we'll talk more about math in session 5, and then also alphabetic references. And then again, session 6, we'll look at eBraille, both the file format and where we are in the eBraille kind of conversion and reading timeline, both, as well as a kind of series Q&A wrap up. So definitely bring your questions to session 6. And also in the exit survey at the end of every session, we ask you for your questions. So if you do have a question that you think of or that would be really good for session 6, please go ahead and put that in the exit survey. We really appreciate it. And I think Alex put that link in the chat as well. Any last questions or thoughts or anything before we wrap up today? Please feel free to jump in. I will go ahead and stop our recording.